Good afternoon. And I would officially like to call the February 26th meeting of the Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority for Harrisburg to order. Our board members are here. I know Bruce is coming. John Raymond is in the throes of the state budget, so he's not able to be here with us. I would also like to note that Kathy has a severe case of laryngitis, so bear with us as we work to have her voice heard one way or the other. She'll be artfully translated by Jeffrey if need be.
Sign language?
Yeah, I only wish.
Barely knowing.
A skill I should have overcome. Everyone has had a chance to take a look at the minutes, I believe. Any corrections? Could I have a motion to approve? Second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, nay?
You might want to do a hand raise.
Okay, sorry. All approved with one hand raised. And Jeffrey, can I ask you to do a report on the finances?
Yes, you have in front of you, members of the authority, a financial report for February 26, 2020. In summary, we have 5 invoices that we paid in this period, all regular invoices, web hosting, web software, legal advertisement, legal services, and for the authority manager. Our starting balance at the beginning of the period was $129,084.78, and our ending balance at the end of this period was $122,613.61, and our interest earning to date is $2.94. Thank you, FNB Bank.
Or F&B?
FNB.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't think we need to take a motion on that. We just enter that into the record. So let me take a moment to celebrate our 1-year anniversary. Hence the 1 bars at everyone's seat. There are some more over there. They are keto friendly, only 1 gram of sugar, plus give you all sorts of other benefits as well. Time has flown, and I'm grateful for the time, energy, and camaraderie of my colleagues. While we lost 1 member, we gained another member. While we started with no help, we gained the able assistance of, go figure, 2 Jeffreys. So thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Jeffrey. Doug Hill joined us. Quiet, elegant addition to our team. Thank you. We collectively started this adventure with a unanimous assertion that we were all in this because we love Harrisburg and we all want it to become the best it can be. Working with the mayor, we know that is his guide star as well. If we all bring our varied and vast talents to the task, I know we can affect change for the better. Our 3 themes in advancing the financial recovery of the city remain sound financial management and reporting, operational excellence, and dedication to community and economic development, which we are now excited will be under the wonderful leadership of Nona. Welcome. Each of us has engaged stakeholders from the legislature to nonprofits to agencies and private developers, and I can say with certainty that all of them are ready to help in every manner possible. We are grateful to them and are mindful that this is what we owe the citizenry of Harrisburg. So much for the celebration. Now onto the agenda, a much more focused working agenda than in the past, and I ask my colleagues to participate freely and often. First on the agenda is the item entitled Petition. On February 14th, the city, the mayor, and Bruce Weber filed a petition in Commonwealth Court. We were notified of this on February 14th by Attorney McBride. While the mayor has stated he disagrees that this is in the public domain, the document was filed with the court, and therefore we must acknowledge it as such. Jeff, could I turn to you to present the needed authorization?
Yes.
Motion.
Madam Chair, I would offer for consideration to the board for a motion and an appropriate second that independent general counsel seeks a motion authorizing the chair to direct the independent general counsel to take any and all necessary legal action deemed necessary and appropriate with regard to the instant litigation filed by the city of Harrisburg, Mayor Eric Papenfuss and Mr. Bruce Weber, Finance Director of the City of Harrisburg, against the Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority for the City of Harrisburg at a currently undocumented matter in which that was filed in the Commonwealth Court for injunctive and declaratory judgment. So that is a proposed motion. If somebody would want to offer that, and then if we get a second discussion, and perhaps
I'd be happy to make the motion if I could just revise it slightly to include designating somebody from the board in case it's needed to execute the signatures on behalf of the authority. And I would just amend it to the motion to include our board chair, Audrey Carter, as authorized to be the signatory, assuming that that's necessary. Would that be okay?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so I'll make that motion.
Motion by Captain.
Kathy would like to make the second to Ralph's motion.
Very good.
And so we have an amended motion on the floor. If we can all
It
agree.
would actually be the motion, because
Oh, sorry.
amending his statement, but that would be
Sorry.
the motion.
So it's an amended motion. No.
Well, I'm the one making the motions. Yeah, I don't think that the general counsel can actually make a motion. So
Okay.
I'm amending the text he gave us to add the authorization of our board chair,
Right.
Audrey Carter.
And I just wanted to
Do
know
any
whether
signatures
it
needed?
needs to be reread. Or can we just accept it, acknowledging
I'll
that
make
those
sure
three words are going into it?
It'll go into the draft minutes, and I'll
Okay.
make sure that it reflects the council's language as well as Ralph's language, so that we'll make sure we get it right in the minutes.
Great. So we have a first, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Tina. Pointing is allowed in today's meeting. Normally, I wouldn't suggest people should point at each other, but today, that was very helpful. We have a public statement that I would like to read at this point, and it reads as follows. The ICA expresses disappointment over the current litigation initiated by the mayor. The lawsuit is a needless distraction from the important work of removing Harrisburg from Act 47. The General Assembly charged the ICA to work with the mayor and the city in this important transition, and that is the relationship we intend to establish with the agreement. We ask the mayor to abandon this frivolous lawsuit and allow us to jointly focus on the immediate task at hand. From the outset, the ICA members have made it clear that they are dedicated to helping the mayor and the city move forward under the act toward fiscal recovery. The ICA calls upon the mayor to restore our shaken confidence in his ability to work cooperatively on our joint mission, which is to assist the city of Harrisburg in achieving financial stability. The next item on the agenda is an update on the ICA initiatives. We've been working on this, I think, since September or October when we first came up with these. It must be September. It was one of the last tasks that Dave did as far as assigning subcommittees. And so the first subcommittee we're going to hear from has to do with an economic development symposium, and I'm going to turn that over to Ralph and Tina.
Okay. So we are in the process of planning economic development symposium. I think the date is sometime May.
May 8th.
May 8th. As we work through guest speakers and how the day is going to run, we have not only Ralph, but David Shankweiler helping us move that forward, as he in the past has organize events such as this, so we're excited about that. I know, Ralph, if you want to say anything about the speakers? Or
Sure. I think we'll have very shortly, in addition to announcing the date of May 8th, it'll take place in the morning. It'll start before breakfast and conclude after several hours. And we would love anybody who's either watching on the replay or is here to hear it live without tape delay. We'd love for you to block that time off on your calendar and make yourselves available so you can attend. It should be, we hope, a very good symposium. I wanted to add that we're going to require, in order to keep it moving, we're required to consider several contracts and agreements that we would have to approve today, if that's the pleasure of the board. And if so, I'd love to entertain some motions on those contracts and agreements. I believe copies have been previously provided for advance review, and I can turn it over to our authority manager to fill us in the background needed so that we can entertain and consider some motions.
Thank you, Ralph. With pleasure of the President, I'm going to review some of the items that are necessary for action today by the authority to move the event forward. First, I'd like to introduce a dignitary in our front row, Mr. David, in addition to the mayor, who is a wonderful dignitary who's always at our meetings. Today, we are also joined by Mr. David Black from the Chamber of Commerce, who is sitting in the front row, who is pledged to his organization to help be a partner in the Economic Development Symposium that Ralph and Tina just mentioned. And one of the things that we need to do tonight, with the pleasure of the authority board, is to approve our partnership agreement with CREDIC so that we can continue the planning of this event that, as Ralph said, is scheduled for May 8th from 7:30 a.m. To noon. So it's a morning event that will occur hopefully at the Harrisburg Hilton. We do have, that's another piece of business. But Dave, I don't know if you wanted to say a few words about maybe the partnership and how this is potentially just in general, how we're going to work together on this event.
Sure. We're going to be the back office, if you will, of this event, since we are set up for registrations and bookkeeping and registration and name tags and those kind of things. We'll provide the back office, and I work with Jeff and others as needed. It's a very basic agreement, and I'll just state for the record, we probably should have put in all other duties as required, but we'll do that. We obviously would like to see it be a success. So we appreciate the ICA reaching out to us, and we're happy to participate. What we are talking about a small fee, but that's just to cover our staff time, and we think it's reasonable, and we're pretty sure we're not going to make any money on it.
Yeah. That's not what this is about.
Yeah.
So I noticed that we were mentioned that our former chairperson, Mr. David Shadwell, is helping us with the event. So just to clarify for those who are curious, he has left the board, obviously, but he's still able to volunteer his time for a good purpose. And Mr. Shadwell believes that the Economic Development Symposium for the city of Harrisburg is a good use of his time. And so he is assisting with Tina and Ralph in trying to create some of the plans. And I know he worked with you and your organization, Dave, to put together this agreement that we have before us. Yeah,
I'd also add we're going to do some marketing for the event, social media, various channels to spread the word. Because as I understand it, it will be open to the general public. So.
It will be. So I don't know if anybody has any questions for Dave before we proceed with approval of this agreement. This would be the time and place to ask. One always heard things.
Has the agreement been circulated?
We have an agreement, a draft agreement that we will authorize, but we are authorized for execution. But we do not, won't be signed this evening until a final agreement is approved by, or reviewed by the board. So there is a draft agreement, yes.
Shouldn't that be circulated?
Yeah, I have extra copies of the draft. I'd be happy to share. In fact, as of now, since we're discussing it, it's a public document, so I'd If anybody in the audience would like to see a draft copy of it as well, please.
Ralph, that's what we're gonna say.
Jeffrey, could I ask?
Please.
There's a couple different contracts that we need to consider today. that are
Correct.
all writing. Would you mind giving us a list of the ones that?
Sure, so basically, there's three parts to this proposal tonight, and I'll just not to confuse them, I just did the first one, but now I will do the second one, and I'll explain it as I walk around. The second agreement, which I'm distributing in draft form, is an agreement with Harrisburg Hilton for the venue for this Economic Development Symposium. And the third agreement that I'm going to distribute is a draft agreement with the speakers, who would be the main, there's a number, and maybe Ralph, you should explain how the event's going to be run that day, but the main speakers of the event require a contract. So I don't know if you want to explain that in more detail.
Be happy to. Maybe you can finish your list.
Okay, so it's those three contracts. It's the CREDIC agreement for the partnership, the Hilton agreement, and the speakers agreement. So the three agreements that require execution, and we have drafts of them all. They're still being reviewed by independent counsel, so they won't be signed directly, but the idea is to authorize the chairperson of this meeting to execute these agreements on behalf, in a final form, approved by legal counsel sometime soon after this meeting, and then a final executed one that would become public documents and placed on our website.
Not an agreement. Can I ask a question about the budget for the event?
Absolutely.
I saw an email with a proposed budget.
Sure.
Since we're acting as the contract signatories, do we need to approve anything in terms of budget amendment?
Yes, we do.
For this?
We do. We actually have, in our adopted 2020 budget, we have money set aside for an economic development symposium. And I think before we talk specifically about the cost of the symposium, we should probably talk a little bit about the concept of it, that I know that you and Tina and Dave and Audrey spoke about independently. So the idea is that there will be an admission cost for people to attend this event. It is not a free event. There will be opportunities, however, for scholarships, for students and representatives of community organizations who may have trouble affording the main entrance fee. But there will be a ticket sale. That's what Mr. Black was talking about, that CREDIC will handle the sale. And of course, the Chamber of Commerce runs a number of symposiums and events throughout the calendar year, so this is just another event that we're partnering on. And so those sales will generate revenue. That revenue will offset the cost of this event, the throwing of the cost of this event. In addition, my understanding from the committee is that you will be seeking out sponsorships as part of this, and that's not uncommon for government symposiums to have sponsors as well. Those sponsors, if they will make a cash contribution to be recognized at the event, and if they do so, that also offsets the cost of the event. The goal is to try to break even. So I want to say that before we talk about the cost, because we don't believe that in the net we may not have a deficit, but if we do have a deficit of the event, the authority has, as I said, in its budget, money for an economic development symposium, and therefore would use its proceeds up to that amount to cover the cost of the event. The total budget of the event as it stands right now is $28,000. As I said, it is anticipated to cost $28,000 to host. It has an anticipated revenue of $28,000. That, by the way, includes the $2,500 fee for CREDIC. It's included in that $28,000 budget, and it is the hope that, once again, at the end of the net, that the Economic Development Symposium will be a neutral revenue event. But it's been determined that that is an appropriate use of the authority's money in order to bring together people in the community to have a morning event where economic development and the city of Harrisburg are specifically discussed. And so that's what the committee has recommended, that we may I offer any additional information?
Any other questions?
So what we would be looking for at today's meeting is an authorization for Chairperson Carter to execute these 3 agreements once they've been reviewed and for legal purposes by the independent counsel. And then once they're signed, we will distribute and make them public and place them on our website. And Dave is prepared and Creedic is prepared to start the marketing campaign. We're going to work together to develop a name as opposed to just Economic Development Symposium. And some marketing materials, and we've also pledged to use our time and our energy to try to get attendees at what we think is a very worthwhile event. And I don't, as this is public information at this point, I don't think there's any reason not to mention who the speakers are.
I see their pictures right
Because
there.
their pictures are just handed out to the audience. And although we haven't executed the agreement with them, I still think we should, I think, Ralph, since this was, you were part of the committee, maybe you should talk about who it is that we're hoping to obtain as our speaker, since it phrase it that way.
Be happy to. So the keynote speaker that's lined up is actually 2 individuals. It's a husband and wife, James and Deborah Fallis, who are well regarded and well known as the authors of a great read called Our Towns. I believe everyone, at least as far as board members go, has at least heard of the book, and several of us I know. I have a shared copy that someone before me I know used, and I have to figure out who to return it to or pass it on to next. I will say that it's a well-known book, and anyone is welcome to Google what it's about, and really interesting people who I think will have something to contribute. There will also be 2 additional panel-style presentations, including experts from outside of Harrisburg, from other communities, who talk about some of the things that they do, which will hopefully provide inspiration to us. And the 3rd and final component, the other panel, will be an outside expert who can also, again, talk about planning principles for community and economic development that can hopefully be of inspiration to our peers and colleagues in the city as we hopefully help inspire some economic and community development. So that's the basic format, including some coffee and some networking time that's included.
This isn't a softball question because I don't know. Okay, I think it says it here. According to the plans the notes that I were given for this, you anticipate approximately 150 attendees, or is that the maximum that you think might attend? Or just to give people a sense of how large this event may or may not be.
The maximum is 300.
Okay, so somewhere between 150 and 300 is our goal for attending at the event. And I don't know if you wanted to mention specifically, since we're on video, who you might hope what kind of people this might be interesting to, and who might want to attend this symposium?
That is a softball question. We hope that this symposium will be of interest to local practitioners and to local people who care about the community, as well as business, government people, both from Dauphin and Cumberland, Perry County, from the Tri-County area, as well as potentially from further out, who are interested in both participating and attending the various parts of the symposium. We would hope to have both government people in attendance as well as people from the private industry side. And we're proposing to do a 2-tier fee structure so that folks on the public side are paying a lower rate than people on the private side. And we've also hopefully set aside some tickets in scholarship format, which was a suggestion from one of our members, so that it could also encourage the attendance of someone such as a student or a scholarship recipient or recipients who could then attend the symposium without having to worry about the financial aspect of it.
Do I understand correctly as well that we'll be doing some direct marketing with some of the community groups throughout the city?
And then a marketing effort would definitely have to be part of it.
Right, so Doug, you're absolutely correct. I think the way it was explained to me by the committee is there's sort of a formal marketing, which some of which Creedic will do with their email and their contact list, and then more of we will send out targeted marketing to community organizations and partners and stakeholders. So both of those marketing campaigns will occur simultaneously to try to drum up interest in the symposium. If I got that right.
Great. And fortunately, we have some folks, both currently on the board as well as a former board member with a lot of experience when it comes to hosting large symposium-style events. And so we feel pretty confident, and I think we're pretty excited about an event that after this initial event should become an annual highlight of the season for the business community.
And this can be a tease because we don't have the answer to this yet. I know that you're working on somebody very exciting, perhaps, to be our master of ceremonies, and it hasn't been arranged yet. That could be an exciting addition to the agenda for that day.
So other than the contract that's proposed, I think it would be great if we could hold off on announcing some other
Absolutely.
panel members so we have something else exciting to announce in the future for marketing purposes.
So just to clarify, if everybody doesn't have any other questions, what we'd be looking for, President Carter, is Chair Carter, is a approval of the first agreement. We should do this probably in 3 separate motion seconds and approvals. And just to clarify so that it's in the records, approval of the creative agreement also includes the small compensation for the Chamber of Commerce of $2,100, which I hope to.
Madam Chair, may I comment on this publicly before the vote?
Is everyone all right with allowing that?
All right.
Do we have a motion in a second?
No, we do not.
Why don't we get a motion in a second then?
Then we'll pause.
Okay. So we're just talking about CREDIC right now.
Correct.
Could I get a motion? Could someone make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Mayor?
This is the first time the city has seen any of these documents. There has been no discussion with the city as to the content of the symposium or even the date of the symposium, which is surprising to me, considering we are supposed to be working cooperatively. I am personally not available on the 8th. Nobody's bothered to check my schedule. That's a Mother's Day weekend. I guess that's fine, but is the goal to involve the city in this at all? That's just a question. Secondly, I think this is an egregious sort of offense to the taxpayers. I don't think this is the role of the ICA to put public tax dollars at risk, which this certainly is. Maybe there's a plan to recoup them through ticket sales, but nonetheless, you're voting to put $28,000, more than a quarter of your annual budget, at risk for an event, which really is the type of event that should be hosted and contracted for by the chamber, not by the ICA. And these are agreements in which you're pledging $28,000 of taxpayer money to run a symposium that hasn't even been discussed with the city. Secondly, in terms of the content of the symposium, I happen to know the fellows well. I like them very well. They came last year to the bookstore for free. We had a standing room only crowd. Not clear who negotiated a $20,000 fee, but that seems outrageous on the face of it, especially when they have a book tour or other means of bringing them here potentially at no cost. So I'm strongly in opposition to this, and I would recommend a greater discussion, especially with the city, before we put tax dollars at risk with a plan for a symposium, which really is more appropriate for the private sector. And I think it speaks to a larger sort of mission creep of the ICA. I think we should be focused on what the charge is under the law, and the charge under the law is certainly not running an economic development symposium. It is hopefully working collaboratively with the city to get an agreement in place. Thank you.
Unfortunately, that went well beyond just talking about the CREDIC motion, which was on the table. We appreciate your comments. This has been part of our discussion since, I mentioned, since October. And we formed a subcommittee. We feel that it is an amazing opportunity to pull together the best and the brightest, to help pull together members of our community, to engage in the discussion of community and economic development. And we thought that it was important to get this ball rolling because we had been waiting. We're lucky Nona's on board now. We're excited to partner with Cretic, so we know we've got the right team in place to make this happen. Again, we said we're fundraising for it to get the partnerships. We are not, we're all doing this on a volunteer basis, so raising the money will not at all be at taxpayers' expense. It will not detract from the agreement, negotiations, and further movement on that.
Is it okay to propose an amendment to the motion? What I would suggest is that perhaps to address one of the mayor's concerns, perhaps we could amend the motion to consider an alternate date in addition to May 8th, if that's possible, because that way we can keep the event on track.
We haven't signed the agreement.
We haven't signed it yet, so perhaps what we could do is we can amend it to say that prior to finalizing the date, we can touch base with the mayor's office now that the position of economic development director is finally filled. We could potentially work with the administration and the economic development director to determine the most appropriate date for the event. We do think it's, and then continue to plan the event. We do think it's a valuable event for the communities as one hasn't taken place like this. Would that be something that the board would?
Can we ask whether there's been absolutely no discussion with the city about any of this content that we're seeing for the first time here today?
And personally, I would say because we've tried to keep conversations with you directly in line on the agreement and moving that forward and didn't want to distract those conversations at all. We knew it was in good hands with this committee and with Dave helping. But the one thing
Isn't that kind of the role of, I mean, of me being a liaison to the city? I mean, I assume since the contracts were handed out only to me, I assume you have all seen them already, I would guess. It seems odd that I wouldn't just be aware of that and I could communicate that to the mayor and then we could have that conversation. It does seem kind of reasonable, regardless of the content, just sort of the logistics of the plan. I'm kind of shocked that like I wasn't aware that all this had been moved so quickly.
I do think perhaps we need to figure out how to make Dropbox more accessible than Notify, because that is...
I was, just to let you know, timing-wise, I became aware of this past Friday. I knew there was a subcommittee and I knew they were meeting, but I had not seen any contracts until Friday, and they're still not finalized. They're still in draft form, which means that changes can still be made. I think the concern of the committee, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the committee, but the way it was told to me sometime secondhand, is that we only meet monthly, and there was a concern that even though there were still arrangements being made, they wanted to make sure that Kathy had some sort of authorization if a signature needed to be made between meetings. And they wanted that on the record, not that she was going to sign contracts this evening, because things still had to be put in place, but that was the hope, that they could be executed without having to come back to another meeting. We meet so infrequently. But I would take some of the responsibility that I did not send it to you before the meeting. Bruce, and for that I apologize. But there's still time to get your input, and I would certainly appreciate it.
So we have an amendment to the motion, and no wait, we're right now we're still on the Cretic
Correct.
contract. So let's get back to the Cretic contract. We had a second on the table. So relative to signing the agreement with Cretic, which we should amend to say that the date that we've settled on perhaps would change, but we would check with you as well, Dave. So with that amendment, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
So it's unanimous. And the second, it really is the same thing. It's not done yet. There are still some changes going on, including the date. We'll make that clear. It's not set. But we do have in front of us a potential agreement with the Harrisburg Hilton for use of their facilities. You will see that the charges associated with the Harrisburg Hilton are a room rental of $500 and then an additional payment of $1,500 for a total of $2,000 that would be given. And I will mention that this is not the full agreement with the Harrisburg Hilton. This is just the room rental. This doesn't include the food. If there is a breakfast that is arranged, that would be in addition to this, a continental breakfast. It also doesn't include potentially a, whether or not there's any hotel room associated with it or not. There's some thought that that might be necessary. That still has to be negotiated, and so this is not a final agreement, but we wanted to get some sense from the board that, once again, Ms. Carter has the right to sign this once final agreement is ready.
So since there's discussion about changing the date, that's going to change whether or not the availability of the tenants. So
I think they're only going to, according to Dave, and I don't want to speak, he's not here, but if they would only pick a date that would be acceptable also to the Fallows as well as to the Hilton. So that might push it out to another date. They would try to find a mutually acceptable date. I think the committee really wanted it at the Hilton. There was not really talk of other venues. So this would be just to authorize you once it's ready and reviewed by the council, and a date selected to enter into the agreement with the Hilton, if that's the wishes of the board.
Can I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Noting Kathy's vote.
And this is
All those
clearly...
opposed, sorry.
No question. And then this is, the third one would be the arrangements with the Fallows and through their management company, and you do have a copy of that before you, and this would commit to their speaking fee. That would be 2 payments of $10,000 each, for a total of $20,000. The largest of the budget going to pay for them and their attendance as the speakers, and then hopefully probably recoup that money through the ticket sales or the sponsorships. That's the plan. And they would have to be available at the date though, so.
Can I have a motion to that effect, please?
I'll make the motion, and again, I'll just make it subject to the date and making sure that we have a chance to check in with our partners at the city to make sure we're incorporating any suggestions that they may have to make sure the event is as successful as possible.
All those in favor?
We need a
Oh,
second.
sorry, second. Sorry, you were making it, sorry. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
So we will continue, I will continue to work with the committee on finalizing, and I promise as we do that, I will make sure that Bruce gets copies of everything and gives an opportunity to comment on any future adjournments.
Are these all part of the documents that we've uploaded on the Dropbox?
They work.
Up-to-date versions are there.
Okay, but I guess I didn't know that they
That's-
happened.
I also emailed them, and I did not email them, Bruce, so for that I take responsibility.
I think, is there anything else, Ralph, Tina, regarding the development decision?
There's only one question I had outstanding to Jeffrey about the budget, and do we need to, other than the approval of the contracts themselves, do we need to make any authorizations budget-wise?
No, we do not at this point, and I'll tell you why. We do a bill pay. It is, as I said, there is an economic symposium line item in our adopted annual budget. Obviously, I can't pay for anything. I can't actually cut checks and pay for anybody without your authorization. But at this point, we're just taking on contractual obligations. The payment would come at a later point. And that hasn't happened yet either, because obviously the contract hasn't been signed either.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the listening sessions, which again, we've been working on, and Kathy is my partner, or I am her partner in that effort. And I will just quickly update where we stand on that. And you may remember these are efforts to go out into the community to solicit sort of how they're feeling about Harrisburg. We thought about going out with the tagline of share with us 3 things that you enjoy about Harrisburg and 3 things that you would like to see improved. These would be, an attempt would be made to have them throughout the city, hosted with nonprofit community partners. And we talked to the mayor and got his approval to engage is the the wrong word, to reach out to Blake Lynch, who could give us some great insights as to who the best partners would be. We're thinking about 3 or 4 of them, probably try and get them in April, spilling over to May if necessary. We want to get registrations. We want to be able to reach out back into the community and share what we've gathered, so that as we find themes, areas of interest, areas where we might put people together, we can do that. Again, I think it's a way that the ICA can actually reach out into the community and make sure that we are getting a good sense of that pulse as well, as we continue in our work looking at how to help the city. We don't anticipate spending much money other than probably water and cookies or something like that. That event's no honorariums, those sorts of things. So we just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention, certainly as it parallels the Economic Development Symposium made sense tonight.
I have a softball question for you.
Please.
Is it possible that you can let us know what exactly the point of the sessions will be, of the listening sessions, what you hope to get out of them? I think that would be a good
Right.
to share with everyone.
Yeah, and that's, again, we'll synthesize all the comments that we get as we get out there, and perhaps also identify themes that are important and put them in the respective buckets of work that each of us is engaging in at this point.
And once again, who do you hope would come to those listening sessions and participate?
Well, and in that case, it certainly is the citizenry of Harrisburg. We really want to be able to cross all the different areas, demographic profiles within the city, and firsthand find out what people are thinking out there. And Kathy is writing, so I will keep talking.
Kathy suggests that the target would be the citizens, the real people of the city of Harrisburg. That's what she would. So I was up here. Thank you. That was my question. And last question, do you have any idea when these events might occur?
April, we're thinking
Okay,
next.
so you're still working on venues and participants, but you're
Right.
thinking as early as the first one might be this spring?
Right,
Okay.
sorry.
Are they going to be facilitated, sort of
I think
moderated or guided?
We will be looking for partners. The partners may very well reveal better facilitators. Short of that, Kathy and I have decided we have done this during the course of our careers, and we're willing to take a stab at it.
Your fees are pretty reasonable.
They can't beat them.
Okay.
So normally we don't take questions from the floor at this point because we reserve that for public comment. I just saw Nona put up her hand. Haven't met you. Hi. Saw your picture.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, everybody. No, I actually just had a question about the audience, who you were going to be reaching out to. That was going to be my question, and who was going to assist you? Was it going to be just the two of you? And also, especially if you're going around in Harrisburg, that's what you're doing, that I definitely would like to be part of that. It's my desire to be out in the community and actually speak with the residents, because that's where we're going to get the good feedback. So I just want to make sure that I'm a part of that as well.
Excellent. I think there was a clap over here from Kathy, which meant amen.
Well, and
Thanks.
so, all right, we're going to lose the meeting here. But
If I may, I hate to be a downer. I also, while I was, you did inform me that you were going to reach out to Blake Lynch, and I did contact him, and I did say that would be fine. I do not feel that public listening sessions are in the domain of the ICA. I think it's another example of not really understanding your role. I think it's confusing to the general public for the very reason that you're sort of describing them. And I think it really is indicative of a fundamental misunderstanding of what the role of the ICA is. And policy listening sessions are the domain of elected officials, not the appointed ICA board.
I have a quick response, but does anyone else want to respond? I think they're wholly appropriate personally, because we do have a mandate to help the citizenry of Harrisburg. We did not see that we saw a void. We think there is good reason to be out there. You have open sessions when it is focused on a specific purpose, but I don't know that I've seen a broad-reaching survey to find out what other great ideas are out there with the citizenry that might very well be helpful to Harrisburg. And I think information gathering is never bad.
I would concur on that one strongly, and I think it's very important for appointed members of the ICA who are in a position of trust to be able to have face time with members of the public, and only good things can come from listening to and talking to people. You mentioned the word policy, and I don't know what policy has to do with this, so I'll leave it at that. But I do concur that I think the listening component of it is something that we've spoken about for since last year as an initiative the ICA wanted to undertake, and I think it's a noble initiative.
Any other comments? We've done the action that we needed to. We can move on to the next agenda item, which is the ICA City Intergovernmental Agreement. And just reporting out, and then we'll ask my colleagues if they have any additional comments. On Friday, the ICA received a lengthy letter response from the mayor presenting the city's perspective on the agreement and notifying the ICA that a red line version would be forthcoming. At our meeting with the mayor this past Monday, the mayor indicated he would be back in touch soon as to when that might be expected. We remain fully committed to keeping that priority regardless of other issues at hand. We owe that to the citizens of Harrisburg. Any other comments on that at this point? Moving on to Section 203, we've started calling it Section 203 because there's two reports that we owe. We owe it 207, which is to the General Assembly based on the ICA activity that was filed in December. Section 203 is a report on the city itself, and it prescribes that we must file that within 120 days after the end of the city's fiscal year. And because of the leap year, this year that is April 29th. The Act charges us with including an assessment of the city's financial condition and the authority's progress with respect to restoring the financial stability of the assisted city and achieving balanced budgets for the assisted city. That is a quote from the Act. It also goes on to identify significant appendices that will have to be included. We have this as a standing agenda item with the mayor at our monthly meetings, and just Monday affirmed several key working relationships between the ICA members and members of the mayor's staff. Jeffrey will be key in collecting and synthesizing this information. Chapters that we foresee in this document will focus on issues such as intergovernmental cooperation agreement with the city's 5-year financial plan, community and economic development plan, management and reporting, program management, which I know Tina's going to be working on information technology, which Doug is going to take a lead on, debt load and restoring access to credit markets, OPEB trust, labor agreements, privatization initiatives, intergovernmental cooperation opportunities, and any litigation. And those are outlined throughout the various parts of the Act. Anyone else have anything?
Is it going to be a collaborative effort, and will there be an opportunity for a draft document that can be circulated before anything is filed with the state?
Well, you're already working on it.
I'm working on part of it.
Yes, and so we will come to a final document, and then we have also said to the mayor that we will share it with the mayor, allowing him to comment as well, sort of like one would do in the case of an auditor. So our goal is to really get much of this in place by the beginning of, or in the middle of March, so that we have a good amount of time to circulate that. But yes, to use your word, relative to the ICA, it is a collaborative effort. That's a heavy lift for us to pull together.
Well, I'm sure Bruce can be a wonderful resource.
Right.
Yes. So we should try to use it.
Anyone else have anything? And so the final item on our agenda is the 5-year financial plan approach, and the 5-year financial plan needs to be updated. If you'll remember, we granted an extension on that, and so we're aiming for the end of April, and again, trying to work closely with the mayor's office to make sure that as the work is being done, we are doing it side by side, so that we certainly don't want any wasted effort going into this. We want to make sure we offer suggestions to the mayor of what we would like to see, and we're trying to inventory that so that we can get that to the mayor and his team in a timely fashion.
Just to ask a question, the Section 203 annual report, you said is due on April the 29th.
Yes,
No, is that what you said?
April 29th.
April 29th, and I don't recall exactly when the mayor said he would submit his revised 5-year, but it
Well, I
was not
think
about...
I thought we were working to getting a working document by the end of April,
And then
which
June.
will then...
And then June, so it'll be,
That was the,
so what's going to happen, they're going to stagger, so it's going to, I'm just pointing this out if it's not obvious to everybody, that the 203 report's going to come first, then it's going to be a revised 5-year, and by then we'll be moving down the road towards a new annual budget, which is in the fall.
Right.
So that's sort of maybe an audit report in the middle, God willing. So,
No, there's no
well,
rest
not
for
a
weary.
2020, 2019 audit report.
yeah, but,
Like,
but before the budget.
before the budget, I was trying to put them in order, so it would be sort of a 5-year plan, the 2019 budget, then the 2019 audit, then the 2021 budget. Sort of staggering things throughout the year, and then a 207 report at the end. So as you can imagine, I'm trying to figure out the order of things so that we get into a habit of different times of the year, different documents and reports that we're responsible for.
Well, as we enter our second year, we will begin to see trends, and we can have a calendar that helps guide us in the
That's what I'm,
future.
that's
Yeah.
basically what I'm trying to do in my head,
Right.
is the calendar.
Any other comments on that? Next on the agenda is public comments. There are 10 minutes. I will not charge any of the public comments to this point against that 10 minutes. So let's go. We do need to fix that clock.
Yeah.
So it's
The hours
5:05, not 5:06. Any public comment?
Yeah, just real quick, here, filling in for my boss, I brought the capital. We asked last time about the contracts for potential litigation. What law firms you use? Did you guys bid those out? You said earlier you're going to use the general counsel you have now. Is that the whole way through?
So far, the determination has been not to have a contract with any other legal entity other than our current contract with Schaefer and Engel. So Jeff will be handling our legal affairs for any potential litigation at this point.
Okay, and then you said the contracts for the symposium is going to be public? How about
Yes.
the bids? Are all the bids?
They're professional services agreements. They're not required to be bid. So they are.
Okay, so not...
They won't, they are not. In other words, we didn't do a bid to determine the Harrisburg Hilton would be the
Okay.
venue, for example. But the contract itself, once it's finalized, that contract is a public document and will be posted.
Okay, you said there's 2 reports, or I guess 3 reports, the 5-year financial plan, Section 207 and Section 203.
Correct.
Did I hear that right, that you're behind on all 3 of those?
No, we did, we filed our 207 report at the end of last calendar year, and that's available on our website currently. The next report will be the 203 report. That's what we talked about. We're drafting right now. Once that is completed, that too will be on our website.
So it's just the 5-year report that you need an extension for? Is that correct?
The mayor...
Which ones did you need an extension?
That's
Or
fine.
just you?
I'll explain. The first mayor's 5-year financial plan was accepted by the authority and placed on our website. We're talking about the annual update of the mayor's 5-year plan.
Right.
The mayor has asked to put that in the spring, April, then adopted by June, so that's the time frame, April to June. And that was established by mutual agreement of the authority and the administration.
Okay, and then I guess.
But it's not late, it's just coming.
Right. Question on the contracts for these symposium or even the listening sessions, are you guys liable to any like worker complaints and say something goes wrong? Does that fall back on you?
To the best of my knowledge, there'll be an indemnification clause in all of these agreements, a standard indemnification clause. Part of what we're entering into when you enter into a venue is that there's an indemnification. But I will mention that, for example, the Harrisburg Hilton does require a certificate of insurance. The authority carries with it general liability insurance, which they purchase, and they will provide the Hilton with indemnification that direction as part of the event.
And on the event, you said you'd match the revenue or the cost.
That's the
with
plan.
With part tickets, with part corporate sponsors?
That-
Or is there any, I don't know, because I'm looking at, you know, there's government agencies going to be there, there's going to be some, is that appropriate, that corporate sponsors?
I'll let the committee explain why they believe or do not believe sponsorships are an appropriate source of revenue for the event. That's a policy of the committee.
I think there's a tradition in most communities of business community support for civic endeavors. And I'm sure the city receives financial support from business stakeholders who care about the welfare of the community that they're located in.
But don't you think it'd be a conflict of interest, to a certain degree, if they're they won contracts? If I was a business owner, I would be a sponsor.
And you could be. Rock the Capitol is welcome to be a sponsor. We would welcome it.
What would conflict of interest be in that situation?
No, I'll explain to you why perhaps it is not. If any of those corporations that were to do sponsorships, we could hypothesize, since we don't have any sponsors yet, let's say Comcast was a sponsor. They're welcome to sponsor, by the way, they have not yet. If Comcast were a sponsor, that would be a conflict of interest if the ICA were potentially entering into a contract with Comcast.
But I agree with that.
The city of Harrisburg is independent of the ICA. We're
But
two
isn't
separate.
I think the whole point of the ICA was that it's not entirely independent. You guys work together on 5-year plans.
Partnership, very good partnership.
Oh, okay.
But we are an independent Commonwealth agency. We're actually founded under Act 124 by the General Assembly, so we're actually a state agency.
All right.
You could say that it would be a conflict with the state, but I'm pretty sure it's not.
All right. That's all my questions.
Excellent question.
Anything else?
On the 203 report,
Yes.
there is a very pragmatic problem with the way it's written. Where it says it'll have an appendix of contracts, include as appendices all, the word all, historical, whatever that means, loans and other contracts entered into by the assisted city and its corporate entities. In my office, I have a wall where I cannot fit the financial historical documents just for the city. The entities we don't control them. They're the CRWs, they are the Housing Authority, they are the Harrisburg Parking Authority. So we really pragmatically we have to come up with what is it? Because the legislature doesn't want it either, by the way. They don't want that. So there does have to be some pragmatic discussion about what are we trying to put there. It probably, just the closing binder for the parking system, that's this. The closing binder for the incinerator is this. And so we do have to have a pragmatic discussion is what is it the appendices would go there. Because I guarantee you, no one on the Hill wants a truck to come up and drop those papers there.
And we actually had a discussion with the mayor at our meeting on Monday to begin to figure out how to approach that and make it the opposite of unwieldy, which is what you're saying.
So
make
our
it
office was tasked with the Hill hearing, which was 15,000 pages. The number of people that went into that document preparation, even though those records all existed, was enormous. And the amount of time it took to do it was unbelievable, and it stopped other things from functioning. This is larger than that ask. That ask had a time frame on it. It didn't say, historical loans of the city. So there really does have to be a parameter the board has to practically work through with the city.
And
What is
again-
it to take to the Hill?
again, we started that conversation, and so we know that that is part of what we need to take a look at, and that's why we want to figure out what makes sense, how to reinterpret that to make it manageable. And perhaps it's only outstanding, current, whatever, at a certain level. But we definitely will work that out, because
Just
none of
wanna make
us,
sure.
none of us want to
I'd
see.
like my staff
text.
not to quit, it's very important to me.
Okay,
And,
yep.
Excellent points.
Any other comments? Hearing none.
Just one, if I could ask, we have a wonderful audience today, and I went to the trouble of creating a sign-in sheet. So if you could all sign in on your way out the door, to make it a sign-out sheet, that would be terrific. I'd love to have a record of who attends the meetings, and I appreciate that. And then I just wanted to mention that our next regularly scheduled meeting, unless we have a special meeting, is Wednesday, March 25th, and it should also be in this room.
Yes.
Sorry, I thought of it. What will be discussed in the executive session today? If you can speak to the number of items and describe them, and will Bruce be allowed in the executive session today?
Jeff, do you want to do that?
Yes, so we have, I believe, one issue that will deal with the litigation itself, the petition that was described. And there will be also another issue, I think, that we're going to discuss also that's relative to litigation.
The question was, Jeff, and I think that the answer, if I may,
Bruce will be
Jeff,
permitted-
Bruce is welcome to come to the executive session, certainly to talk about anything that does not present in a conflict of interest to Bruce.
Sure.
So for the,
So
for
obviously,
at least half,
he's welcome to come to
for
the
half
executive
of
session.
what, of the meeting, he'll be here.
The second half, there's some debate about that.
Yep, well, for the second half,
Of the executive session.
weeks.
Yeah. Okay. So it's litigate, there are two litigation ones, is what I
Right.
wrote.
Any other comments? Can I ask for a motion to adjourn to executive session?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Again, and there's no formal action contemplated after the executive session ends.
Right, so we're not coming back to regular session at the end of the
Right.
executive session.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.